On February 13, 1978, 20-year-old student Stephen Caulfield stepped onto the ice of Frozen Lake Baum in Michigan and vanished before the eyes of 3 witnesses. The search lasted 18 days. The body was not found. 10 years later, on May 27, 1988, Stephen Caulfield appeared at a bus stop in Troy, Michigan, wearing the same clothes, with the same watch stopped at 4:30, and with the face of a 20-year-old. He didn't know what year it was. He didn't know where he was. And medicine couldn't explain why his body hadn't aged a single day. Stephen James Caulfield was born on March 29, 1957, in Dearborn, Michigan, to Robert Caulfield, an automotive engineer, and Mary Caulfield, née Pritchett, a schoolteacher. He was the second of 3 children: his older sister Linda, 4 years his senior, and his younger brother Dennis, 2 years his junior. According to his classmates and teachers, Stephen was a calm, methodical person with a strong analytical mind. The dean of the Natural Sciences faculty at Howard College, Dr. William Hargrove, described him in an official statement in March 1978 as one of the most disciplined students in the course, whose performance in geology and physical geography was 23% above the faculty average. Stephen was a junior, majoring in earth sciences, a field that in American universities in the late 1970s was often referred to as catastrophism, in honor of the theoretical school that studied catastrophic geological processes. He rented a small room in the Howard College dormitory in the north of the campus, on the 2nd floor of Building B. The furniture consisted of a single bed, a wooden desk with a hinged table lamp, and a shelf with textbooks. On the wall was a map of the Great Lakes with pencil marks along the shoreline of Lake Michigan. According to his floormate, Jack Waters, Stephen woke up at 6:30 in the morning, ate oatmeal in the student cafeteria, and was already sitting in the library by 8 o'clock. On Fridays, he would call home from a payphone in the lobby. Every Friday, without exception. His favorite item of clothing was a khaki jacket with thin synthetic padding, purchased at Sears in Dearborn in the fall of 1977. He wore it almost every day, as soon as the cold weather set in. Stephen had been skating since childhood. His father taught him on the ice of the pond at his grandmother's house in Ypsilanti every winter, starting when he was 7. In college, he went skating several times on the frozen lakes of Oakland County. It was a deeply personal, solitary activity for him, a way to think. Jack Waters later recalled, "Steve said that ice was like frozen time. He could skate alone for an hour and come back calm, as if something had switched inside him." February 13, 1978 was a Monday. That winter was exceptionally harsh, even by Michigan standards. From the beginning of December, the temperature did not rise above -8 degrees Celsius, and in mid-January, it dropped to -24 degrees. Lake Boom, a small artificial reservoir covering an area of about 2 square kilometers, 28 kilometers southwest of the Howard College campus, was covered with ice by mid-February, with a thickness of 22 to 28 centimeters, according to the local weather station. Formally, this made it suitable for skating. That morning, according to 3 classmates, Stephen had breakfast in the dining hall at around 8:30 a.m. He ate eggs and toast, drank coffee, and read the Detroit Free Press for that day. The front page featured an article about the warming trend in the Midwest that forecasters had promised for the end of February. According to Mark Taylor, a student in his class, Stephen said at breakfast, "We should take advantage of it while the ice is still there. Soon we won't be able to skate anymore." It wasn't a request to take him along, just a statement of fact. Taylor suggested they go together the following Saturday. Stephen replied that he wanted to go alone today because he needed to think about his glaciology term paper. At 12:40 p.m., he left the library building with his notes under his arm and headed for the dormitory. This is recorded in the security log, the last entry with his name in the student ID card system. He left a note on the table in his room. "Went to Baum. Will be back for dinner." He took his skates from under the bed, figure skates, white, bought back in high school, and his jacket. He put on a blue, chunky knit sweater over a cotton shirt, Levi's 501 jeans, and dark brown army boots. On his wrist was a Timex watch with a leather strap, a gift from his father on his 18th birthday. At around 1:10 p.m., he boarded the 47 bus at the campus stop. The bus driver, Ray Holland, later confirmed to the police that he remembered the boy with the skates. Blonde hair, quiet, looked out the window the whole way. Got off at the Point Lake Road junction at about 20 to 2. From the bus stop to the shore of Lake Boom is about 3 kilometers on foot along a country road through a coniferous forest. He arrived at the lake around 2 p.m. The sky that day was low, gray, and overcast. The kind of winter sky in Michigan that weighs heavily on your shoulders. According to the weather station in Pompey Oaks, the air temperature was minus 11 degrees Celsius. The wind was northwesterly, 3 to 4 meters per second. Visibility was good. There was no snowfall. The ice near the shore was dark gray, almost black at the water's edge, where the ground gave off heat, and matte white toward the center. Stephen put on his skates while sitting on a fallen pine tree trunk at the edge of the ice. 3 of his classmates, Mark Taylor, Denise Hammond, and Thomas Rang, arrived at Lake Boom at about 2:45 p.m. by chance. According to Denise Hammond, they were driving to a friend's house in a neighboring village and were not specifically following Stephen. Point Lake Road ran along the shore of the lake, and the road offered a view of the ice. They saw Stephen, a dark figure in a khaki jacket on the white ice, and stopped. Taylor called out to him, but because of the distance of 120 to 150 meters, he did not hear or respond. They stood by the car for about 10 minutes, watching him skate in wide circles in the center of the lake. Then they moved on. At 4:20 p.m., they returned by the same road. They stopped again. Stephen was still on the ice. Taylor described, "He was skating slower than before. He was almost standing still. He was looking down at the ice beneath his feet." Denise Hammond said she noticed him circling the same spot several times, about 5 or 6 meters in diameter, as if looking at something. Thomas Rung got out of the car and shouted. Stephen raised his head and waved his hand. Rang described the next few minutes with such precision that his testimony was reproduced verbatim in the police report dated February 14, 1978. He said, "Steve drove a little way off the road, toward the part where the ice was darker. I thought about shouting at him to come back, but I didn't have time. The ice just opened up. It didn't crack with a bang. It didn't sink gradually. It seemed to part beneath him very quickly. Steve didn't fall. He went down vertically, instantly, as if the floor had collapsed. I saw a splash of water, then a black hole in the ice, and that was it." Taylor ran to the shore in seconds. Rang followed. Denise Hammond stayed by the car and screamed, even though there was no one around. Taylor ran to the edge of the ice and stopped. He knew he couldn't go onto the dark ice. He estimated the distance from the shore to the place where Stephen had disappeared to be 70 or 80 meters. Rang returned to the car and drove to the nearest farmhouse, a mile from the road. The farmer, Carl Daggerty, called the police at 4:40 p.m. The first patrol car arrived at Lake Boom at 5:08 p.m. Officers Benjamin Lewis and Edward Corco recorded a break in the ice in the central part of the lake, approximately 75 meters from the northern shore. The diameter of the hole was about 2 meters. The edges were smooth, without the characteristic cracks spreading outwards, which Officer Lewis noted as unusual for an ice break. Normally, when a person falls through the ice, a network of radial cracks forms around the break. Here, there were none. The hole looked like it had been neatly cut out. Investigator Ronald Hart from the Oakland County Criminal Investigation Division arrived at 6 p.m. By that time, it was already dark. It gets dark early in February, and the surface of the lake was illuminated by the headlights of 2 cars. Hart would later write in his report, "The edges of the hole were not jagged. The water beneath it was dark and icy. There were no traces on the ice around it. No blood, no pieces of clothing, no objects. The only thing found on the ice 20 centimeters from the edge of the hole was a single metal clip from a skate boot. One, not from a skateboard, but specifically a clip for attaching the blade to the boot." The diving team from Pompey Oaks arrived at 8 o'clock in the evening. Diving at night, with the water temperature at minus 1 degree Celsius and 0 visibility in the dark water, proved virtually impossible. The first survey of the bottom was conducted the next morning, February 14th. The bottom of Lake Bohm at the break point was silt, 2 meters, 80 centimeters deep, with a thick layer of sediment. Divers searched the bottom within a radius of 30 meters from the site of the collapse. No bodies were found. No clothing, skates, or anything else was found. Diving operations continued for 8 days with breaks. A group from Detroit with sonar equipment joined them. The search area was expanded to cover the entire lake. The result was 0. Absolutely 0. The report stated, "No body found, no personal belongings found." Dog handlers worked alongside the divers. 2 service dogs, German Shepherds from the Oakland County Kennel, Rex and Lassie, were sent to follow the trail from Stephen's last known location on campus. The dogs confidently followed the trail to the shore of Lake Baum. According to dog handler Margaret Voigt's report, Lassie lost the trail on the ice about 15 meters from the shore. Rex lost it at 23 meters. Voight wrote in her report, "The animals behaved confusedly. Not excitedly, as when they lose a trail on asphalt, but confusedly. They sat down and stared straight ahead. I have never seen such a reaction before." A Coast Guard helicopter flew over the area within a 10-kilometer radius of the lake on February 14th and 15th. Nothing. Search parties of volunteers combed the forest between the lake and Interstate 75 for 3 days straight. The area covered was about 15 square kilometers. Nothing. Robert Caulfield arrived from Dearborn the day after the tragedy, on February 14th, with his wife and daughter Linda. He was described by witnesses as a reserved, quiet man who first asked investigator Hart if they had found anything at the bottom. Mary Caulfield, according to Officer Lewis, held it together until she saw her son's jacket, a spare one left in the dorm. Then she cried. The family paid for additional diving work out of their own pocket, about $4,800. The result remained the same. An official statement about Stephen Caulfield's disappearance was filed on February 20th, 1978. On March 4th, after all search operations had been completed, the Oakland County authorities declared him officially missing. Legal death was declared by the court after a 7-year period, in 1985, at the request of his father. Investigators considered 3 versions with varying degrees of seriousness. The first was an accident. The student fell through the ice, drowned, and his body was carried away by an underwater current. Hydrologists interviewed by investigators explained that Lake Baum is an artificial reservoir with a complex system of drainage channels built when it was created in 1949. Theoretically, the body could have been pulled into one of the underground channels. A group of hydrologists from the University of Michigan, who were brought in to assist with the investigation in March, studied the design documentation and determined that 3 of the 7 drainage channels had a pipe diameter that could theoretically accommodate a human body. However, all 3 channels were found to be completely blocked by silt and plant debris. For a body to enter the canal, water pressure would be required that cannot exist in a closed, frozen body of water, Professor Don Murray wrote in his conclusion. The second version is that it was staged. Stephen ran away from some problems, creating the appearance of drowning. Investigators carefully examined his personal and financial situation. His student account at First Federal Bank of Michigan had $122 in it, with no activity since February 12th. His academic debt was 0. No conflicts with teachers or students were recorded. He had no girlfriend. The Detroit Free Press, in an article dated February 21st, hinted at possible involvement with drugs. In the 1970s, this was the first suspect in student circles. The police checked, no traces. Dennis Caulfield, Stephen's brother, said in an interview with a local radio station, "He was the most boring guy in the world. He read geology textbooks on Friday nights. Steve didn't run around." The third version was an accident without a body. They returned to the first version, but considered the possibility that the body would float up after the ice melted. The winter of 1978 ended late. The ice on Lake Baum melted on March 22nd. As soon as the water opened up, the search resumed. Divers searched the bottom again. Nothing. The case was classified as unsolved in June 1978 and filed away in the Oakland County Archives. Years passed. Howard College held a memorial evening on the first anniversary of Stephen's disappearance in February 1979. Dean Hargrove gave a short speech. A small plaque was hung in the hallway of the library building. Stephen James Caulfield, 1957 to 1978. Student, researcher. Then life took its course. Mark Taylor graduated from college and moved to Houston. Thomas Rung became a teacher. Denise Hammond changed her last name, got married, and moved to Cleveland. They never stopped thinking about it. Taylor would say as much in an interview in 1988, but life is such that even the most painful memories gradually fade into the background. Mary Caulfield continued to celebrate her son's birthday every year. On March 29th, she would set a plate of food on the table, an old habit she talked about in an interview with the Dearborn Press and Guide in 1984. "I can't explain why. I guess I'm just not ready to consider him dead," she said at the time. The court declared Stephen legally dead in May 1985. Robert Caulfield filed the papers himself, not because he had come to terms with it, but because the inheritance had to be legally re-registered. Days passed, months, years. May 27, 1988 was a warm day, really warm, 23 degrees Celsius, clear skies, a light breeze from the southwest. The end of May in Michigan means the smell of freshly cut grass and open windows. Bus stop number 44 at the intersection of Big Beaver Road and Main Street in Troy is a typical municipal bus stop under a corrugated plastic canopy next to the Somerset Mall. At 12 minutes past 12, Frank DeLuca, the driver of bus number 8, opened the doors at the stop and saw a young man sitting on the bench. The young man was sitting upright, staring straight ahead, and there was something about him that DeLuca later described as wrong. Not threatening, just wrong. He wasn't dressed for the weather, the driver said. A winter jacket in May, jeans, boots. He looked at me as if he didn't understand where he was. DeLuca opened the doors and asked if the young man was going anywhere. He got up, got on the bus, and asked, "What year is it?" DeLuca said, 88. The young man stood there for a few seconds, looking like someone who had just been told something physically impossible. Then his legs buckled, and he fell right there in the aisle of the bus. DeLuca called an ambulance. The dispatcher recorded the call at 12:21 p.m. The medics arrived 8 minutes later. The young man was unconscious. His pulse was steady, his breathing was normal, and his body temperature was 36.8 degrees Celsius. There were no visible injuries. He was transported to William Beaumont Hospital in Royal Oak. He regained consciousness in the emergency room after 40 minutes. The first thing he said, Nurse Karen Wolf recorded it verbatim in the patient's chart, "I fell into the water. I just fell into the water." Nurse Wolf asked him his name. He answered without hesitation, "Stephen Caulfield." She asked how old he was. He replied, 20. She asked what day it was. He said, February 13th. 78th year. The doctor on duty, Dr. Patrick Chen, called the police as standard procedure. An unidentified patient with signs of disorientation and unusual behavior. Patrol Officer Kate Mason arrived at 1:45 p.m. She checked the patient's documents, but he had none. No wallet, no ID, no keys. Instead, he had skates. White figure skates, old, with scratched blades, tied with laces by the blades and slung over his shoulder. And also, a Timex watch on his wrist, with a leather strap. The hands on the dial showed 4:30. The watch had stopped. Officer Mason relayed the information to the search base. The match with the Caulfield case from the Oakland County Archives came through 23 minutes later. The database listed him as a student at Hout College, missing on February 13, 1978, Lake Baum, Oakland County. Age at the time of disappearance, 20. Distinguishing features: a 5-centimeter scar from an appendectomy on the right side of the abdomen. Dr. Chen examined the patient's right side. The scar was there. Investigator Ronald Hart, the same one who had handled the case in 1978 and had been promoted to senior detective by 1988, arrived at the hospital at 3:20 p.m. He looked at the man in the bed for about 5 minutes before saying anything. Then he asked the patient to give his father's name, his home address in Dearborn, and the name of the street where his college was located. Stephen, if it was him, answered all the questions without pause and without error. Hart left the room and called Dearborn. Robert Caulfield arrived at the hospital the next morning, May 28th. He was 56 years old, gray-haired, with deep wrinkles on his face. He entered the room and stopped at the door. His son was lying in a hospital bed, looking at him. The only thing Robert Caulfield said then was recorded by Nurse Wolf, who happened to be in the room. He said, "Steve, you must be 31. Stephen replied, "Dad, I just came off the ice." The initial medical examination conducted by Dr. Chen's team on May 28th and 29th, 1908, included 23 separate tests. The results were sent to the Oakland County Laboratory, and copies were sent to the University of Michigan Medical Center in Ann Arbor for independent verification. The established facts were as follows. The patient's age, based on biological indicators, was between 18 and 23 years. The condition of the teeth was consistent with a person aged 20 to 22 years old, with no signs of cavities or fillings that appeared after 1978. The dentist who examined Stephen in 1976 in Dearborn, Dr. Thomas Haynes, kept a file with x-rays. The comparison showed a 100% match in the structure of the teeth, including a small diastema between the upper central incisors. DNA analysis. The patient's blood samples were compared with samples of biological material stored in the case file. a lock of hair that his mother had kept since childhood, and a dried blood stain on a medical card from the campus health center after a minor injury in November 1977. Both examinations, by the county laboratory and an independent group in Ann Arbor, yielded a match. Condition of the body: no signs of frostbite, not on the hands, face, or feet. No signs of prolonged starvation. Body weight 72 kilograms, 1 kilogram less than the last recorded figure during a medical examination on campus in January 1978. No signs of physical trauma. No beard growth. This was noted by nurses in the first few hours. His face was clean, as if he had just shaved, although no shaving was performed in the hospital. Skin condition: normal for a 20-year-old man. Hair: same length as in the photo from his 1978 student ID. Clothing: a 1977 Sears jacket with a label "Made in the USA, Sears Roebuck & Company, size M." Sweater: blue, chunky knit, label J.C. Penney, fall 1977. Levi's 501 jeans. Year of manufacture, according to the lot number, 1977. Army-style boots, brown, with signs of wear corresponding to approximately 2 to 3 years of regular use. No signs of prolonged wear beyond that. No new stains, except for a small water stain on the left knee. Fresh, still wet when admitted to the hospital. Moisture on clothing. The left knee of the jeans and the left sleeve of the jacket at the wrist were damp. Damp, not soaked through, as if from brief contact with water. Chemical analysis of the moisture on the fabric samples showed fresh water without chlorine or salt impurities. In composition, it is similar to the water from Lake Bohm. The investigation recorded this fact, but was unable to explain it in any of the subsequent documents. Watch: a 1975 Timex model with a manual winding mechanism. The hands are stopped at 4:30. Watchmaker Louis Voigt, invited as an expert, examined the mechanism and concluded, the mainspring is weakened to a state corresponding to the watch stopping approximately 8 to 10 years ago at a temperature below zero. Corrosion on the mechanism parts is minimal, consistent with storage in dry conditions. But the fact that the spring has not been wound for 10 years cannot be explained by normal storage conditions. Psychiatric examination. Psychiatrist Dr. Linda Forrest conducted sessions with Stephen from May 29th to June 12th. Her conclusion, published in part in the academic journal Journal of Anomalous Psychology in 1991, was unequivocal in diagnostic terms. The patient shows no signs of psychosis, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or malingering. Intellectual functions are intact. Memory of events prior to February 13, 1978 is complete and detailed. Regarding the period after that date, there is absolute amnesia. The patient remembers nothing. It was this nothing that became the focus of the investigation. Stephen could describe in detail the breakfast on February 13th, the route to the lake, the feeling of ice under his skates. He remembered looking down at the dark ice and noticing that in one place it seemed darker and thinner. He remembered the feeling of falling, instantaneous, without acceleration, and then nothing. The next thing he remembered was a bench under a canopy, bright sunshine, the smell of cut grass, and not knowing where he was. Neurological examination. Dr. Richard Walsh of the University of Michigan conducted a complete neurological examination in June 1988. The EEG was normal. The MRI was normal. No signs of organic brain damage that could explain the amnesia. Amnesia of this type, complete, limited to a specific time period, is normally associated with either severe traumatic brain injury, dissociative disorder, or prolonged exposure to certain chemical agents, Dr. Walsh wrote in his conclusion. None of these explanations is supported by the available data. Biochemical blood analysis, performed twice, on the day of admission and 4 days later, all indicators are within normal limits. No traces of drugs, psychoactive substances, anesthetics, or drugs capable of causing prolonged amnesia. No abnormal enzymes or protein markers. One indicator sparked debate in the medical community: the level of telomeres in the cells, a biological marker of cellular aging, corresponded to the age of approximately 19 to 22 years, rather than the 31 years that Stephen should have been. This result was verified by 3 independent laboratories. All 3 came to the same conclusion. The press exploded immediately. The first article appeared in the Detroit Free Press on May 30th, 1908, under the headline, student missing for 10 years, returns out of nowhere. By June 3rd, the story had reached the Associated Press and spread to all national publications. On June 7th, reports appeared on CBS News and NBC. Time magazine published a spread titled "The Man from 78." UFO publications, MUFON UFO Journal and Flying Saucer Review, released special editions. Theories came pouring in like an avalanche. The most common version was that it was a hoax, that Stephen had been in hiding for 10 years and then decided to come forward. Investigator Hart dismissed this in his public statement on June 4th. In 10 years, this man has not withdrawn a single cent from his account. He has no documents that did not exist before 1978. His biological age is 20. If this is an escape, then explain to me where he was and why his body has not aged. The psychiatric version, dissociative fugue, severe amnesia with loss of identity, would require an explanation of where the aging body went in 10 years. Dr. Forrest told reporters, "People suffering from dissociative fugue live. They eat, they age, they wear out their clothes. None of that is happening here. These clothes have not worn out in 10 years. This body has not aged." The cryogenics, or medical experiment theory. An anonymous commentator in the New York Post suggested that Stephen was frozen, literally, and thawed out 10 years later. The technology for cryopreserving living organisms did not exist in 1908 and does not exist for use on a whole human being to this day. In addition, cryopreservation inevitably leaves traces of cellular damage. None were found. The theory of a temporary time jump. In ufology circles, and in the press and popular science circles, the theory that Stephen Caulfield somehow fell out of the normal flow of time quickly gained traction, that for him, the 10-year gap simply did not exist. That February 13th, 1978, and May 27th, 1988, were immediately adjacent moments for his body and consciousness. In July 1908, psychologist Dr. Eleanor Kraft of the University of Chicago conducted 6 sessions of hypnotic regression with Stephen, with his consent. The sessions were recorded on tape. The tapes were preserved and partially released in 1994, when Stephen himself gave permission for excerpts to be published in his book. Under hypnosis, Stephen described the following. He was rolling down the ice, looking down, and suddenly felt not a fall, but something opposite, a feeling of ascent, rapid, almost instantaneous. He described it as being taken upward, although he emphasized that he saw nothing and heard nothing that he could describe in words. Light, he said on tape, not like the sun, as if the light was everywhere and nowhere at the same time, as if the air itself was glowing. Then, darkness, complete, absolute, without a single point of reference. And in this darkness, objects, balls, discs. He had trouble describing their shape. Sources of light that moved chaotically and changed color, from cold white to green, from green to red, from red to something he described as a color for which I have no word. They did not come closer. They did not move away. They just were and moved. No heat, no cold, no sound, no smell, no sensation of his own body. I didn't know if I had arms, he said on tape. I tried to move my fingers and didn't understand if they were moving. No sense of time. It wasn't like long or short. It was like nothing at all. Time simply did not exist as a category. And then, abruptly, without transition, a bench, the sun, the smell of grass. Dr. Kraft, in her analysis published in the journal Anomalistic Psychology Research in 1993, wrote cautiously, "Testimony under hypnosis cannot be considered proof of an event. Hypnotic regression can reproduce both real memories and images constructed by the unconscious from cultural and archetypal sources." Nevertheless, it should be noted that Stephen Caulfield's description bears a striking resemblance to descriptions of other documented cases of so-called lost time, including cases recorded before the widespread dissemination of ufological discourse in popular culture. This similarity warrants further study. One fact about the hypnotic sessions remained little known to the general public until the book was published. During one of the sessions, the third, on July 18th, Stephen, while in a hypnotic state, suddenly stopped in the middle of describing the darkness and said emotionlessly, "There were others." Dr. Kraft asked, "What do you mean, others?" He replied, "I don't know. I didn't see them. I knew they were there. Like, you know someone is standing nearby in the dark, even if you can't see them." He could add nothing more on the subject. either under hypnosis or in conscious conversation. The reaction of federal agencies was much more restrained than one might expect from an event of this magnitude. According to available information, at the end of June 1908, 2 agents, posing as employees of the U.S. Department of Health, visited William Beaumont Hospital and requested Stephen Caulfield's medical records. The hospital administration handed over the requested materials in accordance with federal procedures. The agent, listed in the visitor log as J. Morton, presented identification that the hospital's chief administrator, Richard Sloan, later described as looking standard, although I cannot say with certainty which agency issued it. A request for identification of this individual, subsequently filed by the Caulfield family's attorney under the Freedom of Information Act, was denied on the grounds that this information is not within the jurisdiction of the requested agency. In July 1988, Stephen Caulfield gave his only public press conference in the hospital conference room, in the presence of his lawyer, Brian Call, and both his parents. He spoke briefly. He said he could not remember anything after 4:33 p.m. on February 13, 1978. He said he did not know what had happened and did not intend to claim that he did. He said he wanted to finish his education and return to normal life. When asked about UFOs, he replied briefly, "I didn't see any flying saucers." When asked if he had been abducted by aliens, he replied, "I don't know what happened. Anyone who tells you they know is lying." After being discharged from the hospital in mid-June 1908, Stephen lived with his parents in Dearborn for several months. According to his older sister, Linda Caulfield, he was quiet, pensive, but not depressed. He read a lot. In the evenings, he would sit on the porch for long periods of time, looking up at the sky. Sometimes he asked his sister to describe what had changed in 10 years. Music, fashion, politics. He listened attentively, without commenting. He watched news reports about his own case calmly, almost clinically. In September 1908, he was reinstated at Hott College. The academic administration was accommodating, counting all his courses from 1975 to 78 and offering him an individualized plan for completing the program. He graduated with a bachelor's degree in 1989, having switched his major from earth sciences to psychology. His thesis was titled Dissociation as an Epistemological Problem: What It Means Not to Know. His advisor, Professor Ann Pedersen, described it as unconventional but technically flawless. In 1993, he defended his doctoral dissertation at the University of Michigan titled The Phenomenology of Temporal Discontinuity from a Neuropsychological Perspective. The work was published by an academic publisher and received moderate scientific recognition, being cited more than 100 times over the next 15 years. In 1995, his book 430, An Attempt at Explanation, was published. The title refers to the time on a stopped clock. In the book, Stephen systematically analyzed each of the proposed theories and rejected each one with varying degrees of detail. He characterized the theory of UFO abductions as unfalsifiable and therefore unscientific, adding, "I'm not saying it's impossible, I'm saying that I don't remember it, and memory is the only tool I have." He described the theory of time travel as mathematically intriguing, but lacking a physical basis in modern science. He described the theory of psychological explanation as insufficient to explain the biological data. The book sold about 70,000 copies, not much for the mass market, but significant for academically oriented nonfiction. It was received with disappointment in ufology circles. Stephen Caulfield refused to be the symbol that others wanted him to be. In scientific circles, it was received with cautious respect. A man who had experienced an inexplicable event described it soberly and methodically. After the book was published, he gave several more interviews to Discover Magazine, Skeptical Inquirer, and once to CBS's 60 Minutes. Everywhere, he said roughly the same thing. "I don't know what happened. I know that something happened that our science cannot explain. It's an unpleasant situation. It is impossible to live comfortably in it, but it is possible to live fairly calmly." In 1996, he married Suzanne Merlin, a psychologist he met at a conference in Chicago. In 1988, they had a son, James. Stephen worked as a clinical psychologist in private practice in Ann Arbor, specializing in dissociative disorders, a choice of specialization that could hardly be called accidental. One fact about his life after his return remained outside the public narrative until an interview he gave to Michigan Quarterly magazine in 2000. He said for the first 2 years after his return, He would sometimes wake up in the middle of the night with a feeling he described as follows: "I knew where I was. I knew I was me, but for a split second after waking up, I didn't know what year it was." This feeling, he called it a shift, lasted for a few seconds. By the end of the 1990s, it had disappeared. Second fact, he never, not once in his entire remaining life, returned to Lake Baum. He didn't just not go there. He actively avoided any routes that might take him in that direction. When a Detroit Free Press reporter asked him why in 1988, Stephen replied, "I don't know what's there. I know something happened there, and I don't want to know if it will happen again." The third fact, which has gone virtually unnoticed in public discussions. In 2003, researcher Daniel Kaufman, who was preparing a dissertation on cases of lost time in the MUFON database, discovered a record in the agency's archives of a report from March 1978. The report was filed by Carl Daugherty, the same farmer who called the police in February 1978 when Thomas Rang ran to him. In March 1978, Daugherty called the local MUFON office and said that on the night of February 13th to 14th, the night after the disappearance, he saw something that was not an airplane over Lake Boom. According to his description, a bright object, motionless, at a height approximately equal to the tops of tall trees for 3 to 5 minutes. Then it disappeared without a sound. Daugherty died in 1985, 3 years before Stephen's return. His widow, Martha Daugherty, confirmed to Kaufman in 2003 that her husband had told her about this sighting, but did not want unnecessary attention and did not go to the police with this information. Kaufman published his findings in an academic journal in 2005. Stephen Caulfield, who was sent a copy of the publication, replied with a short letter. "Thank you for sending me the material. It's interesting. It doesn't explain anything, but it's interesting." In 2008, Stephen Caulfield was diagnosed with lung cancer. He had never smoked in his life. This was documented. Oncologist Peter Davis of the Michigan Cancer Center, who treated him, noted in private correspondence, which later became known through his widow, the type of tumor and its behavior are atypical. Its development is much more aggressive than expected. This is not an explanation or a conclusion, just an observation. Stephen underwent treatment until 2013, not publicly, not giving interviews, not participating in discussions. On March 22, 2014, Stephen James Caulfield died in Ann Arbor at the age of 56 biological years, or 46 if you count from birth and subtract the 10 years that did not exist for his body. His wife Suzanne and son James were by his side. Linda Caulfield came from Detroit. His parents did not live to see him go. Robert died in 2006, Mary in 2009.